So really, really happy to be here today. As Vince said, I've been a partner, I've been a member of the Northeastern community for over a decade now. So coming to campus here I'm feeling very much at home. And I'm excited to talk a little bit today about patents and IP with all of you. So I'm going to ask the question, first of all, how many of you have ever invented something? Okay, now, yeah, invented something. I mean, bringing something new to the world, and that's what we're talking about. And you think about it, okay, we've all done that, okay? And most of us do that sort of unconstrained by any formal definition of what is, what is an invention. It's just kind of something we do, especially when we're young. We invent things all the time. As we get older, we start to put more parameters around what and why we do what we do. And, then you start thinking about what you're doing less creatively, and you don't give yourself credits for the things you do in terms of creativity and inventiveness. But, I think the fact that you're all here today says you're at least, on we'll say the right side of the bell curve in terms of feelings around creativity, or you wouldn't be here, which is good. As Vince said, my career has been largely in materials. I'd say, probably specialty chemicals, engineered materials, usually on the front end of technology and product development. That was, I won't say an accident, but it certainly wasn't something that I had planned to do from the beginning. I kind of fell into it. When I was in college, I thought I was going to be a chemistry teacher, and I got to college. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a chemistry teacher, and when I went to college, I said, well, I could be a chemistry professor. And then when I was in grad school, I had a hard time figuring out where I would fit into the university world, and so I ended up in industry. And I hadn't really given IP or patents any thought whatsoever. And then, the demands of the job often drive kind of what you do. And so, that led me down the path of doing what I did in terms of technology development, and you've got to protect what you make. And so, for almost 30 years, that's the kind of stuff I've been doing. To give you some context today, Vince mentioned Rebuild Manufacturing. That's the company I work for today. Rebuild's a company of about 3 years old, founded by some MIT grads. MIT has a program, basically it's an MBA in operational leadership, and a number of these folks were in the same cohort together, and recognized that over the last couple generations, and they'd been very successful after they left those programs and working in the manufacturing world, and they said, over the last couple generations, we have bled all of our manufacturing jobs overseas. And if you think about it, today I think the statistics are 6% of all jobs in this country are manufacturing jobs. 6%, okay? And what we've seen over the last few years is that, there's some real problems with that in terms of supply chain and available technology. There's been a lot of IP bleed, and that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to talk about intellectual property and patents here today, what that means. But, it was done innocently enough. The world was changing. We were going to have a global economy. The U.S. has been strong in innovation and technology development. Oh, we'll ship it overseas where, manufacturing costs are lower, and that's kind of the way things went until between, the lessons we're learning about the length of the supply chain and the fragility of the supply chain and the political tensions that can make those things dangerous. And just, we start to think about how much we've given away not to get it back. So that's some context for what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about patents, and I am not a lawyer. So, this is basically an industrial researcher's perspective on intellectual property. And then David's going to come in and probably correct my math here. So this is good. Okay, so you talk about, what does a patent do? Okay, and everybody's like, oh, a patent, we get a patent, and then I have, basically rights over this technology, and that's true. There is a financial benefit for having a patent. It basically is a stake in the ground to say, I own this, invention, okay? And it has a societal impact. When you think about the value of some of the inventions we've created, I mean, just, where would we be without our technology? And the fact of the matter is the companies that have been successful aren't necessarily the companies that have the best ideas. They're the ones that have been able to successfully deploy that technology, and a patent gives you some protection to do so. But the other part of that is that there is an obligation in seeking a patent to disclose what they call best mode, which means I'm going to go out and I'm going to get some proprietary position. I'm going to get basically a temporary monopoly over this technology that's claimed in my patent. And that's good for me because then that means only I or my company can practice that patent. But to do so, I have to teach the world what it does and how it does it. And that means, I'm enabling my competition. Now that's good overall because, things go faster that way. It's really the same principle of a referee journal article. As a researcher, you put it out there, you've got your name associated with it, but you're teaching the rest of the world how to do it, and then other people get good ideas, and things snowball from there. So there's that contribution to further innovation, and that's specific around that invention, but if you think about it, it becomes a climate where it triggers other innovations. When someone takes your concept over here and recontextualize it over here, and now you've got something that you would not see kind of a clear and direct path between the two ideas, but they're related, and that's where trends come about. And you start to hear these terms about macro trends and mega trends around technologies, and it's about cross-pollination of ideas across spaces. So this is some of the impact of patents. And, you say, well, what is a patent? Well, a patent is an invention, but, in order to get claims allowed for the patent, some patent examiner has to say, is it a new idea? So we talk about novelty. If someone's done it before, you don't get credit for it, okay? Now, the novelty can be either very basic or very narrow, and, I'd say that more often than not, something that's new is narrow because all the big ideas are already taken or already out there. But you also have to enable it, and that gets back to that whole best mode disclosure, is that you have to say, I have this idea, and convince the examiner that you've got sufficient thought to say, how do I make that idea work? And that's part of the invention disclosure. And like I said, if nobody else can do it ahead of you, and therefore you have to say what you've done and how you've done it, and you've got to put some limits around your invention. Or if you don't, then the examiner will, and then that's what you can go out and protect in the world. So, that's the gist of what's in a patent. And keep in mind, too, that once the claims are allowed, and it can take 4 or 5 years, sometimes longer, to get those claims allowed, that you've got that monopoly, and 20 years after the initial filing, that expires, and then it's free for anybody to go out there. And they talk about, for example, generic drugs. Well, those are the drugs that are off patent. And, pretty much anybody can go out there and practice that IP if they know how to do it based on the patents themselves. But then there's also another element to intellectual property. There's the patents, and that's the stuff that's out there and described and disclosed. And there's trade secrets. And we'll talk a little bit about trade secrets and what they're like and how that's different, too. Okay. Now, getting into patent versus trade secret. Patent is simple. You go and you can basically Google online and what's the patent for this or for that, and you can read the patent, you can learn what the inventors described and what went through the prosecution process to get to the allowed claims. And it's interesting, if you look at the initial application and you look at basically what they call the file wrapper, which is the history of the prosecution of that patent, things change. The examiners review, they challenge things, they bring up prior art, say, well, what about this? How does this relate to your invention? And that shapes the whole claims. So what you file and what actually comes out the other end could be considerably different, right? But then the other thing to it, too, is that there are things that are out there that basically you don't get to claim because other people have done it before you. Or you talk about freedom to operate, which means somebody also has a patent. They've already filed a patent, they have claims allowed. And even if you file something, you go out there and let's say I create some new patent, and it's novel, and I've described how to enable it, and I get claims allowed, and it's this patent over here, but someone else has a patent that's broader and came first, and so my patent here is valid and active, but I don't have freedom to operate without permission who has the overarching patent. So that's something you might encounter as well. So when you're going through this process, you have to think about, what do I have, and what can I claim, what protections does that give me, but do I have freedom to operate in that space? And that's something you'll learn over time too, because it means that basically I've got a patent, someone's got a more general patent, and we go from there. So sometimes patents are the way to go, and sometimes you're like, maybe I'll keep it a secret. The famous secret that everyone talks about for intellectual property is the formula for Coca-Cola. And you'd say someone goes out there and to have a trade secret doesn't really happen in academia much. It's not really set up to work well in universities where disclosure is what it's all about. But in a company, the secret sauce or the process by which I make something, you can keep that a secret. Now, you can't just say, oh, it's a trade secret and leave it at that. You have to actually demonstrate that you've taken reasonable precaution to keep that trade secret. So you have to basically prevent people from getting access to that thing to say, if there is a lawsuit and you're saying that you're basically coming and taking my secret property, that I've actually taken steps to protect it, and someone came in and stole that property, and I was financially disadvantaged. So trade secret is a real thing. It's a good thing. It can be valuable. And there's a time and place where it's really useful. Because if you think about it, if I have a patent for construction, let's say I'm making a new type of tire for a car, and I can get one of those tires, and by reverse engineering or examining it or taking it apart, I can see what you've developed, your inventions in there. There's a material that you've put in there. Well, it's obvious that this tire is based on your formula. And so if you're the one who has the tire, Professor, John came out and he's making these tires, well, then you can say, well, I'm suing you because you're practicing, and I can prove that because when I reverse engineer his tire, it's my technology. But what if it's just a process by which you do it? There's nothing that's discernible in the article to show how you got there. It's basically the temperatures and pressures you use to make that tire. Well, you have to make a decision. Do I publish that as a process patent, or do I keep it as a trade secret? Okay? Like I said, it doesn't really apply that much in academia, because often when you're publishing in academia, you're putting your thoughts out there, you're writing in sort of the technical description, the body of the article, this is how I got it to work. And part of that validation, that verification that your results and your research are true, come from the fact that someone else could reproduce it. Well, in industry, you don't want people to reproduce it. And when we talk about trade secrets, getting back to international IP, if you think about it, one of the things that happens, things that we worked long and hard, spent a lot of time and money to figure out, and then somebody basically takes that technology, it leaks overseas, and someone who didn't pay that price to get this technology can now practice it. And maybe in some instances, because we taught these people how to do it. We wanted to take it overseas because it was cheaper and it was easier. And, maybe this was some technology that has some, risk for pollution. And we're like, oh, we'd rather have other people. We don't want to have that around our, our cities or our, in our watershed. And we go from there. And people are like, yeah, I'd be happy to do it. Now, all of a sudden, we're not doing it. We can't get access to it. And, the fact of the matter is when you cease to do something, you also, over time, forget how it's done. And so there's a real risk for us. If we don't do these things ourselves, we lose the capacity to do these things ourselves. So it's all tied together when we get into the intellectual property and the know-how, coming back to my interest in enabling manufacturing. And, that's a theme for me. So that's kind of trade secrets. A couple things about the patent process, how it works. Like I said, you have an idea, you have an invention. What do I do from that? Well, one thing that often happens is that people say, well, I went to the tech transfer office and they said, fill out this invention disclosure. And so I did, and I handed it in. I'm good to go. I'm going to go give my presentation at the conference about my new intellectual property. An invention disclosure gives you no rights in terms of IP. Okay? All it is it's basically a record of what your thoughts were at the time you wrote the thing. And it stems from the days back when it used to be what's called first to invent. Okay, so the patent system in the US was kind of unique in the world. It was based on first to invent. And this is why in your laboratory notebooks, you still have signatures and witnesses, because that's a holdover from the days when you could go and you could invent something and you went into the courts and you proved, well, I had it first because here's my invention on this day in October of 2022 to show that I had this here. Well, the rest of the world, and now the US also works in what's called first to file. So it's not about when you invented it, it's about when you filed the application, okay? So an invention disclosure is not a patent filing. So keep that in mind when it comes to what we call disclosure. And disclosure is basically me standing up here, and if I'm showing you something that is my new idea, my new concept, in a public forum, then basically that's a disclosure. And what happens in the US patent system, 1 year after I make that disclosure, I lose the right to file a patent. If I presented something today and then filed the patent in 2 weeks, no problem. The US system gives you that leeway, but there is a clock that starts ticking. Now, international patents, disclosure is disclosure. They don't give you that lead time, so keep that in mind as well. So all that to say, an invention disclosure is not a formal patent filing, so it doesn't protect you from subsequent disclosure. So what typically happens, you go in and you file what's called a provisional patent. And a provisional patent is basically, it's, again, this stake in the ground. It's a preliminary patent you put out there to say, by this date, this was kind of the state of my invention, this is how I thought about it. You put it in, and it gives you a year. After that, it gives you that filing date. So if I filed it 3 weeks from now, I then have 1 year that patent's out there. It doesn't get examined. Nothing happens other than the fact that I've got a year to continue to work on my invention. Okay? And then from there, you have what calls it converts from that provisional into a utility. Now, the utility is the big dog patent application. That's the one that goes to the patent office. It goes through the patent examiner, and you review that patent. Basically, the claims are picked apart, and ultimately, at the other end is where you get your allowed claims. Okay? So, a couple things in the university environment. When you file a provisional patent application, some people are like, oh, I'm going to go to the MRS conference and I'm going to present this work. Here's my PowerPoint slides. Can we send it in as a provisional? And that can be done. But I would say you need to be, if you really want to do a good job with that, you need more than just the PowerPoint. Because the problem is, if that patent ever comes to litigation, and the litigation's about what's in that initial disclosure, and things are ambiguous because you gave a PowerPoint presentation, you didn't reduce it down to your best, or kind of your best mode, there's more risk for you in the IP than if you had something maybe that's narrower but more specific. So you might not want to necessarily call it a formal claim structure, which is the way you really describe in a patent, and David's going to talk more about this. But the gist of it is, you want to have some structure around what you're filing so that people know what you're really on about, okay? So that's in the provisional form. When you go to the utility, you're going to have claim structure. You're probably going to be working with a patent attorney, whether it's in-house or it's in a law firm. They're going to basically take your ideas and go from here. Now, when you file your patent, you want to file as broadly as makes sense for the scope of your invention, because as you work towards basically the issued patent, things will always get narrower. They never get broader. Okay? So you go out there and you claim as broadly as you think is reasonable. And you have to take into account that there's discovery as you go, and so you might find other art that narrows you further, or you might find some things, other things that, patents that limit what you can scope, and it narrows it further, and things come out the other end. But you really want to understand, you don't want to claim so broadly that it's meaningless too. And, this is more than this is probably beyond the scope of what we can talk about in 20 minutes. But that's kind of some advice, and we can talk some more about that. Another thing to be careful about, and this is where, the challenge for the university, the tech transfer office is there to help you protect your IP, okay, but they don't have unlimited resources. And so, all the different faculty and all the different students who have ideas, they want to come out and they're like, I'm going to file a patent because I want to start a company. And the tech transfers office is like, do you know how many of you there are and how many patents that means and how much that costs? Because a patent over the full history from initial filing through the end of life can cost $250,000 to $500,000. Okay, so the university can't pay that for every idea that comes out. So often the universities say, okay, we'll file the US patent, but we're not going to file the international patent. And, that's fine for US practice, but most of the time corporations work internationally, want to have rights internationally. So the international patent is important. And that's got to be a discussion between you or your faculty advisor or the tech transfer office within the context here. It's like, how can I get to that international patent? Now, the thing is, the system, it's called the PCT, is the Patent Cooperation Treaty. It's kind of a clearinghouse patent. You file one application, you get most of the world's coverage, okay? And you file that at the same time you file your utility patent. And then as prosecution goes along, you get to the stage where they say, okay, which countries do you want to go into? And that's what happens there. Universities don't automatically go down that path for cost reasons. But from a corporate point of view, you might want to think about that. So, that's something to consider about, and then if you're starting a company and you're starting a company and that's part of the reason why you're trying to file these patents, that can be part of the discussion with the tech transfer office too, because they have advice and guidance and resources to help you sort that through. So that might be part of the deal that you reach, whereas under other circumstances, they might be a little reluctant to do those things. So that's that. Okay. When do you file? Well, basically, when you file is when you're getting ready to disclose. Okay, and there's a couple reasons to do it. Like I said, you're going to go to an MRS meeting, you've got this new technology, you're going to disclose it, you want to talk about it, therefore you want to have your patent filings done because you don't want to talk about it outside of that context. You can, if you're under NDA, talk to people about that. You might say, hey, I'm going to go talk to this corporation called Rebuild out in Framingham, and I've got these great ideas. Well, maybe before you talk to them, even if you have an NDA in place, a non-disclosure agreement, which will protect your non-disclosure so it's not out there, you want to establish that before I talk to Rebuild, this is what my invention was. These were my ideas. If we collaborate down the road and they add ideas of their own, I want to establish this was mine ahead of time. So maybe you file an invention, a patent, before you talk to some third party about your ideas, either because you're going to disclose it publicly or you're going to collaborate with someone, or at least consider collaboration, and you don't want to get things messy. So that's a time to do it. Publication is another reason. Corporations are doing it because it's a stage towards product development. In many instances, like at the Innovation Center that I had in Burlington, we were doing platform development. Over the course of 7 years, we filed over 100 applications. Okay? Probably about a quarter of those actually went towards products that were in the field. But the idea was that we're establishing kind of a portfolio. And so there was, we had the budget and we were filing those things. And we were filing them so we had rights to the IP that we were going to commercialize. And we would follow that too, the basic platform IP. And then as we got closer to a product, we got the more specifics, the features and the benefits of the product. And so you have this pyramid of IP. But then you also have something we called picket fences, which was, there's another way to do this that we don't think is as economically feasible or useful or has all the benefits, but we don't want to compete with it. So we're going to file those picket fences to keep other people from practicing that IP, to have a product that might be inferior or might just be different, we'll protect our flanks a little bit there too. So that's another reason to file patents. But as you go along, this is the kind of strategy that you start to build over time. And maybe sometimes you're not really interested in starting a company yourself at all, but you want to basically go out and find someone to license your IP. And it's the same strategy. You want to get out there and say, here's my invention. I'm really looking for this large corporation to take it and run with it and get it out there. And I will continue to work as a faculty member here and establish my basically my credibility as being sort of a thought leader in this space. And so it's the same principles of patent strategy to make these things work. And that's when to file. But then there's one last thing I'll say is what not to say. Okay? The thing about patents, it's basically a way to protect your intellectual property. But there is conflict. Okay? Someone might dispute you and say, I'm going to ignore what Randy Erb's patents are saying. I'm going to produce this thing anyhow. And since I'm not in, he's not living in this country, maybe I'm over in Brazil and I'm practicing this thing and he may never know. And I'm just basically following what's in his patents. And I'm infringing on his patents. And he doesn't know it because he's not in Brazil. Well, if Randy finds out about it or someone ships that product to the US, now you're infringing, assuming he didn't have rights in Brazil. So there can be litigation. Or, you could basically find someone's infringing your patents or vice versa. So one thing to be careful about is I would say that when you're talking about intellectual property, a good rule of thumb is that let the lawyers have opinions about what is a good patent, what is a bad patent. If you're not a lawyer, then there's more risk. But the other thing is that, often what you say in your email or your presentations, even if it's privately within the university group or the company, it can be discoverable. And if you've got an email saying, hey, this looks just like what we're doing here, and you're talking about someone else's patent, and that's discoverable, it's kind of a smoking gun to say not only were you infringing, you were aware of it, which is treble damages, okay? So you want to be careful about what you say. So I would say when you talk about things, try to avoid opinions. We used to use code. When we'd see a patent application, we're like, oh, that looks interesting, which was kind of code for, we better have our lawyers look at this and see if this is going to be problematic for us. But it's something to keep in mind, that you want to be careful about how you talk about these things. There's a thing called attorney-client privilege, that when you're actually saying these things, you can say things to your attorney that basically is non-discoverable because it's attorney-client privilege. And so, in those circumstances, that's a good opportunity to work with your patent attorney, either to get opinions on these things or to speak freely about, how you would frame your technology versus what they say. But it's easier to pick up the phone or talk face-to-face than put things in writing. And that's just something to do when you're thinking about opinions on other people's art.
I want to build off what Shawn was sort of talking about. And again, he really did a fantastic job. So if I want to kind of go through the steps of where you are in that process. Now, I like to call it the spark. It's that moment you get that invention. For whatever reason, mine tend to happen at about 3 or so different points in time. One, when I've been working out, which you can tell I haven't been doing lately. But usually when I'm exhausted, I have the spark. The other one is that 3 a.m. wake up, which has actually been documented. There is something that goes on in the brain where you are sleeping, something's processing, and you wake up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., and there it is. And the other weird one for me is the shower. I have no idea what's going on in the shower for me, but I have a lot of inventions that come out. I'm just in there. I think I'm just relaxed or something. Or I'm exhausted because I have 2 kids and 2 cats. It's one of those. All right, so let's sort of just march through this, okay? You start with your spark. You've got your invention. What are you going to do? How are you going to protect this? This is your pre-seed. You have no funding. You have no money. You're broke. I mean, unless you are wealthy, then hey, good to be you. But most people aren't. So what do you do there? How do you know where to go? First thing I want you to do, scour the internet. Go to Google Patents. Okay, don't start with a patent attorney. Don't call us yet. It's too soon. Look and see if someone else has filed to your patent. Now, if you find someone and they filed your invention, and this has literally happened to me. I invented a best pool product ever. I had a big pool in New Jersey, and I was just constantly cleaning it, and I bought a robot to vacuum the pool, and I was like, this is great, I finally have all this free time, and I put the robot in, it was doing a great job, and I'm like, I still got to skim this damn pool every day. So I just went ahead and made a drag-along system. And I thought it was the best invention ever. I'm like, oh my God, I nailed this one. Every once in a while, a patent attorney does something and you're going to file it. And I happen to have a patent attorney myself to use. So I scoured all the patents out there, didn't find anything, called up my patent attorney friends, because I got a lot of them, and said, hey guys, search for this. And the jerk who I ended up partnering with at this firm found what literally was my invention. I mean, it was to a T. It couldn't have been more spot on. It was like a time machine, where like I went back in time and wrote the damn thing. That product's still going to come to market. We're actually working with people in China who are going to build it. And why? Because that patent is no longer enforceable. It was from like 1958. So who cares? So what do? Get creative. File a design patent to it. Design patents are super easy to get. Shh, they are. Okay? I literally never had a problem getting a design patent. If you have trouble getting a design patent, get a new attorney. Okay? All right, so I want you to go ahead and search to see what's out there. Go on Google Patents. Don't be afraid, though, if you think you found something that blocked it. If you're like, if it's that good of an idea, a good attorney can help you find a way around it. Or a good attorney can do what they really should do, which is stop you from wasting your time. Okay? We don't want to see you waste your time. And I'm going to tell you, as a patent attorney, I hate doing that. But I also love doing it because I see just that wash over in the face. And it's like, sorry, you're blocked. But I also know that now that person is going to go create something else. Because by definition, people who invent. They don't stop. You just keep going. You're like the Energizer bunnies of creativity. All right, so let's say, though, you don't have anything blocking. Why do I want you to start with a search? I want you to see what's out there. Now, anyone who's ever seen me talk about IP, I'm sorry, you're going to hear this again from me. There are 3 things in life that are a battlefield. War, or that involve battlefields. War, love, and strategic IP development. You have to know the landscape of the terrain around you, or else you will not know where you are. You won't know your relative position. And if you have to know your relative position, because that's what you're trying to protect. Patents, the right to exclude. They don't give you the right to make. So you're protecting your kingdom. That's where you start. So what's your patent look like that you're going to file? University, anywhere. All right. You're going to file a provisional. I'm going to tell you to file a provisional. Why? Because it's cheap. It's $110 if you're a small inventor. But what should that provisional look like? Well, as Shawn said, we're in a first-to-file system now. Man, it was way more fun back in the day, by the way. All right, now it's like, get it in. Go ahead and get something in, but then stop. Pause. Always have a partner. Have someone you're bouncing your ideas off of, and just dump everything you can, every possible solution, whether you think it'll work or not. Put it in a provisional and file that damn provisional. That's your second provisional. We're doing something called rolling provisionals here. This is the most economic way to protect yourself. Okay, so you file the first one, bam, get something in the sand. Brainstorm, 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 bam, next one. You got 1 year to perfect that invention. Use the 1 year. Don't just sit back, don't coast. Use it. Keep coming up with things. Keep filing. These are cheap. Send it to your patent attorney. Let them legalize it. Don't spend a lot of money on that. Okay? We're like, you don't have the funding yet. All right, so let's see. I got some notes here, and I have bifocals so I can finally read. I want you to do long, dense patents, everything in there, kitchen sink, all of it. These are provisionals. How many? A bare minimum of 1. If you haven't filed a provisional and you're going to get funding from a company, good luck. It's very rare that it works. 3's better. 30's way too many, unless it's not. There are times when you need 30. All right, now you get some cash. You raised your pre-seed money. Maybe you got a loan from a family member or whatnot. Probably don't do that. So now you're looking to get your seed round. And all right, we're going to jump through Series A all the way through whatever realm you're going to get to revenue generation. So what are we doing here? All right, now you filed that initial group of patents that you filed, right? That's protect the castle. Now, like Shawn said, minefields, thickets, walls, whatever you want to call it, it's Operation Fortify. strengthen everything out. Start building out in different directions. You're going to protect your castle. You want a good way to think of it, organize this sort of tactic by specific technical needs. There are things called patent families. Effectively, it's like a family tree from your regular family. Try to get a minimum of 3. 3 unique, different areas to file into outside their castle. I don't know why, but 3 is the number I kind of start at. It just seems good. Good things come in 3s, like death. No, not death. All right, so, all right, here's one of my pro tips for you. Don't ignore what you did before when you were protecting the castle. So you're going ahead now and you're trying to fortify, you're trying to reinforce everything. Look back at that disclosure. Scour through it, have your patent attorney scour through it, sorry. Work with your patent attorney and have them go ahead and try to do claims from different directions. Method claims, system claims, looking at it from an infringer, looking at it from a third party, whoever it could be, looking at it from the position of a would-be investor. That one's really important. The person who cuts you the check, you want to make sure that they can read that claim and it's spot on with what they're looking at. It seems common sense, but I think it's missed a lot. Another pro tip, blend those. Blend those new filings. Those things are called continuations when you're doing that, when you're filing from different directions based off of the original patent filing, your protective castle. Blend them together. Make it confusing. Go in different directions. This is a battlefield that you're creating. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be, when this gets to the point of enforcement, which we're going to get to, if I can talk faster, then you'll realize that it's chaos. And it's a distraction for the business, to be honest with you. Okay, so your revenue generation is increasing. Someone in your finance department says, hey, we got a pathway to profitability here. We're going to do this. This number's going there. Now you've got some serious money you've raised. You've raised at least 10 million. Maybe you've raised 50, maybe 150. It all depends on what your numbers are at. This is when you take the pedal and you stomp on it. This is when you start aggressively filing. Because now you're no longer looking at yourself. You look at, remember that battlefield that we started with? And there's, company over here, patent over here. You start seeing all these different groups. You got to start getting in there a little bit. You have to start taking control. You also, at this point, you want to start poking people in the nose a little bit. You want to get uncomfortably close. Sorry, you took front row. File the patent, and you're right here the whole time. They will step on you. Sorry. Never take front row. Why do we do that? Most companies, at least the ones that I tend to work with, want to get acquired. Who's going to acquire you? It's the company that you're a little too close to comfort with. They probably want to make you go away, or hey, they're right there. Let's absorb them in. So you poke them in the nose. This is a little uncouth, but I'm going to say it. Tell your attorney this. You're poking in the nose, you're not kicking in the balls. Just trust me, they'll know what that means. Because that's a whole thing. It's too much attention is a bad thing. So I have a pro tip for you here. Just sort of memorize this a little bit, visualize it. It is equally important to protect that which is yours as it is to take away that which is important to your adversary. All those other companies, when you're at this point of pushing the pedal to the metal because you've got profitability, there's a reason I'm talking about profitability and where it's coming in, which is you want to take away their space. Easy way to think of it. If you are in a battle, on a battlefield, a real battle, and you're in a nice high position, you've got the high ground, you've got the ground surrounding you, you've built out all of that arsenal, and now you're looking at the other fiefdom that wants to attack. If they have to traverse something, they're going to need water. Their troops will need some resources. Take that away from them. Make it harder. Put yourself right in the position to attack. You're going ahead and you do your tactical filings, which is in the person's face. You're building out. You've protected your castle. You've fortified the castle. You've got your outer ranks over here and over here. You're actually getting into the position you need to for the incoming war. When do you get sued? I can tell you exactly when you get sued. When you take away someone else's money, that's when you get sued. this whole process of what I'm having you build out here is for that moment. Because most likely the company that's going to sue you is one of those companies that you're getting a little too close for. And they want to make you go away. And a lawsuit, a lot of people look at lawsuits, and maybe it's because I'm an attorney, they don't bother me. It's like, the first cease and desist you get is going to scare the crap out of you. I had one of my good friends get one. He did a rock and roll dating website, and he got hit with a cease and desist. He was a Northeastern alum too, by the way. And man, the panic on the Friday night when it came in, and me just being like, hey, I'm busy right now because I know it's Friday night, but I'm a lawyer and we just work all the time, which we do. Go have a scotch, 2 scotches, and I'll call you. Just calm down. It's not a big deal. The cease and desist is by definition designed to scare the crap out of you. It's okay. It's just a fight. It's just a fight. That's all it is. And getting sued is not necessarily a bad thing. It actually means you're pissing somebody off. That's not a bad thing. That's the person who might acquire you. So, how are we going to win? How are we going to win a fight when you're into it now? So we've started from, you got your seed or pre-seed, you've gone ahead and you're trying to just file that initial provisionals, get that covered. You've gone ahead and you raised your seed A or Series A, your 2.2 million. Now you're around 10 million. You've protected all this. You put all your defensive positions in over here and over there, over there. You're uncomfortably close to this gentleman. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. Never again will you pick front and center. So how do you attack? Why did we build this out? Because there are things that I consistently am seeing companies do that are just stupid. All right, number one, stupid, don't do this move. Do not do this. You are pre-seed Series A. You are not generating revenue. And you found an infringer. And the CEO comes running, sue that fucker. They're going to sue him. Let's go get him. Don't do it. No, you're not ready. You're not in the right position. Lawsuits, patent lawsuits, and this is a fun fact, are super expensive. Think $1 million. That's like entry to get in there. The way you sue someone, if you're going to fight, if you're going to get in a fight, fight to win. Okay? What I'm constantly doing is slowing people down when they come in. They want to go in and they're, it's like, no. Take a breather, chill out, give us about 9 months. During that 9 months, if we do see the infringement, what we're going to do is we're going to take that patent, we're going to file 3 or 4 continuations immediately. Why? Because I don't want to go into a fight with one punch. I want to hit them with like punch, as many as I can. I'm also going to go ahead and file patents that are new ones, and we're going to track those. I can tell you consistently, I have my land speed record is like 68 days for an issued patent. That's super fast. Unfortunately, my co-counsel at the time beat me because she was like 66 days, and she would never live that down, like constantly rubbed it in my face. But you can get patents fast. A good attorney will know how to do it. That being said, 9 months to a year. That's about the fastest you can get them done. Continuations, yeah, within that 9 months, you should really get it done. That way you come into a fight with a full arsenal. Now, all those other patents that we filed over here, hopefully one of those comes into play here. Because now this is your bargaining position, your chips. These are your other carrots you're going to dangle, your other areas of things that are troublesome that you want people to get around. And when you get to the negotiation table, that's where those come in. Does that make sense? I often find that like when I'm talking about patents, I have this weird visualization. I can see it in my head. I don't always know if everyone else can do it. We deal with non-tangible assets. Everyone else is living in a tangible world. I'm not a material girl. I'm not living in a material world. I'm living in non-tangibles. Let's see. My favorite Sun Tzu quote. All wars are won before the first blow is cast. Your attorney should know if they're going to win before they get in that fight. If you're going into a fight and your counsel isn't damn confident that they can take them, probably don't get in that fight. It's probably not a good move. Probably going to lose. I don't know, maybe you want to flip a coin for a few $1 million, but I personally think if you're going to get in a fight, you better win. But if you don't win, spin. Spin. Everyone's doing this. You'll see it. Some company loses to major infringement. What's the first thing, the publication that comes out? We are pleased to announce that we've joined forces with the company that sued them and won. It's a spin factor. That's just sort of the nature of the game.